So anytime I talk about keys, I'm going to bring up this guy Kirchhoff. And he says that the algorithm doesn't matter, the way you derive things doesn't matter, the protection of the key is what matters, right? And this is a case where we need to have good protection, but it also needs to have some amount of transportability. So I need to be able to keep this key with me no matter what happens. I can lock it into a secure enclave, or I can put it someplace where I can always have access to it. But the challenge is going to be the logistics around maintaining that key and keeping it with you at all times. And then the second problem that I think is going to be kind of carried along with the keys is what happens when I need to change it. We've all had a cert die, right, on a web server or on an email server, and it causes havoc, right? Because you now need to reload a new cert on there and get it spread out. This is the same kind of problem that we're going to see. I think we've solved these problems well. It's just spreading it out to consumers is going to be a big challenge, I think, for these organizations.
In fact, it's interesting because over the last year and a half, we have started to see a number of service providers, and we have seen different strategies. No? And one of the first questions is, should we offer the possibility for users to switch from passwords to passkeys, or should we be more assertive and should we be pushing them or presenting that as the new default option? No? And well, obviously the adoption rates that you see in one case and in the other are different, but we have seen how, for example, Apple enforced and decided to start using passkeys for their own service with the release of iOS 17, and they have done it without much notice to the end users. It's a question on whether there is a lot to inform to the end users about deploying passkeys, or if it is a switch that the service provider must decide to do and take it full on with all consequence about that. Obviously, not all service providers can act the same way, but it's an important question there. Okay.
So I want to take a step back because I feel like we're doing technology is cool. Technology is cool. No business buys technology because it's cool unless you're a technical business. The reason we buy technologies, and this is a control, a passkey is just straight up an example of a technical control. The only reason they do it is if there is a business justification. And in this case, it's going to be about net reduction of risk that the business cares about. And I think that when you think about using a control like passkeys and you want to make a business case for using it, something that folks have to work through is how are you going to measure and report on the use of your passkeys and then link that automatically back to your reduction of potential risks to the business? Because if you don't do that, we're ending up doing technology for technology's sake. Somebody's going to say, well, it costs too much, or it isn't actually doing what we expected it to do. And then on the actual implementation of it, once we've got through the business level agreement that, hey, this is a technology that works, it's trustworthy, it will reduce our risks, and we have a way of predictably measuring that reduction of risks, then beyond just the training that Pedro spoke to, we have to start having a way of auditing to determine, like, are we managing our compliance and our risk better? And are we addressing our security risks on a consistent basis through the use of passkeys? And I think finally there has to be, this might go into procedure updates. I tend to think in those a lot because I've worked at companies that have been audited a horrendous number of times. Like, make sure you don't still say, yeah, we use passwords if you're using passkeys. Like, put that in there, because when the auditor sees that, they're going to go, oh, well, actually, they're probably doing a more reasonable job. I don't need to look at this as hard as if they say, yeah, we're using one character passwords and no MFA.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the things that we typically see as well. When you're looking at passkeys, we almost think about it in a broader sense, but like, well, we want to do more passwordless, right? And passkey is a way that you're able to implement some of those. But, just don't underestimate that not everyone's ready for this. And so we do a survey every 6 months, and we recently talked to over 1,200 IT admins across US, UK, India, and ask a bunch of different questions. But one of the things that came out was actually there's still 20% of those organizations that don't even have a password manager. Right. So even kind of at the base level crux. So you got to start thinking about how does this fit into a larger passwordless kind of story? And so you might not be ready for passkeys. Maybe it's just getting single sign-on set up. So it's one less thing that you have to worry about. And then starting to think as you start to go down that implementation journey, kind of what is the feedback loops? As Kane mentioned, like the audibility of this is like, great, you set it up, but can you tell who's accessing what, or kind of who gave them permissions in the first place? That needs to be thought out in terms of as you start to think about these different elements that you want to think in a kind of more holistic authentication strategy.
Absolutely. And I agree with everything you guys said. Plus, I want to add a little bit more too, because the planning is so important. I built the security and privacy program at Principal Financial Group throughout the 1990s. I learned a lot of hard lessons there. And one of the things you want to make sure you do, don't go out and try to boil the ocean all at once. So if you're rolling out passkeys, first of all, where are you going to have the most value and what subsection or subnet within your entire digital ecosystem? I would definitely recommend that you look at where is passkey going to bring you the most benefit first. Learn from that experience and then start phasing it out into other areas just to make sure that you can learn from your mistakes of a small group before you try to roll it out to the world or the universe of all of your users. And don't forget about your third parties that you subcontracted, because there's going to be APIs connecting you and cloud services and so on. So,
Rebecca, can I just add on to what you just added in there? Because I think it might be, like you said, subnets, and not all of us have subnets anymore because we sometimes are cloud focused. I think an easy way to determine is a passkey potentially a good fit? Look in your risks associated with your most critical systems. And those are like the 5 systems that have to come online after a disaster, they have either a business continuity plan or disaster recovery plan, one of the both, right? If you're trying to figure out where do I start with passkeys, start there, because if that is the thing that the business cares about the most, that it has to be that important, now definitely don't do a big bang approach. Like, figure out how you're going to deal with how to integrate the authentication, but also what you're going to do with a lost device or a stolen device or an allegedly stolen device, which is even more nefarious. But that's the ones to start with, where you're going to be able to show progressive reduction in risk to the management team, rather than, I think it gives us clearer guidance for where to go, rather than asking the application owners who wants to go first, because very few of them are going to go, oh yeah, that sounds like fun, you could wreck my stuff. Because there is that fear that you have to get through. And if you've got that business case to get past it, it makes it a lot quicker.
It does. And definitely, too, make sure your key stakeholders are involved in that, because you have to have their assistance with it. But also, the other point I was going to add earlier was that you need to make sure you update your security and privacy policies and supporting procedures accordingly. Don't forget to do that. To your point earlier, Kane, you have to make sure that you're going to pass an audit. So you need to make sure your policies and procedures, are corresponding to those.